Welcome to Mommispace, the podcast for moms of all stages. My name is Aubree Cutz, and this podcast was created to give moms a voice to share their experiences and to share that there is not just one way to be a mom. This is a place where you can learn to love the woman inside the mother. Welcome back to Mommispace. This is Aubree Cutz, and this month on the podcast, we are focusing on family traditions. And I thought it would be fun to interview some older mamas who have been moms for a while and now have raised kids that are having kids of their own and are in the season of being grandmas, just to kind of hear a more broad perspective on what family traditions looked like when they had littles, as well as what are some traditions that they want to bring into their family now with kids that are grown, and with their grandkids. So today I have the honor of interviewing my very own Mama Worrell. My mom, Fayanna Worrell, is on the podcast today, and I'm very excited to talk to her about some of these things. When I think about family traditions, I think about a lot of sweet memories that I had growing up. So I thought she would be a fun guest on Mommispace. So Mom, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is super fun. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. We're sitting face to face, just to give you a little perspective, in my living room. It's nap time. My gecko's crickets are chirping in the background if you hear those, and we're sipping tea and just getting to chat. Yeah. So this is kind of a treat. But yeah, welcome to Mommispace. For people that don't know you, I'd love if you could just share kind of overall, briefly, who you are, where you're from, and what your kind of family unit looks like. And then we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds great. Well, my name is Fayanna, and I am the mama to Aubree, my oldest, the beautiful girl I'm sitting here across from. And then I have my beautiful son, Nick, and my wonderful son, Brody. And I've been married to my husband, Ted, for almost 30 years. My mom and dad immigrated over from Holland in 1954 and started our family out here with my brother and I being born here in the States, but coming over with my then 4-year-old sister. And so a lot of fun traditions from the old country were then brought to America for us to enjoy growing up. And then some of those I was able to then take and bring into the family that Ted and I have grown over these last 30 years. So
going off of that, what are some of your own childhood family traditions that you mentioned?
Well, it's kind of fun. My parents came from Holland, and so in Holland, St. Nicholas was a really big deal. St. Nicholas is their Santa Claus. And so every December 5th, we would do what was called St. Nicholas Avond, which meant St. Nicholas Eve, and it was a night of a lot of food. The Dutch people were really good at food and getting together, family and gatherings and all that kind of stuff. So St. Nicholas Eve was always on December 5th, and my mom and dad started a really cool tradition where they would have each of us choose a name a few weeks prior to St. Nicholas Eve, and we would then take that name, and that would be our person, and we would either create a small little special gift or we would purchase a small little gift. For a season, it became kind of a gag gift where it would be kind of a funny thing, but it always correlated with a poem that we would write about that particular person. And it started with just the 5 of us, and now we are still doing St. Nicholas Night, and we are into the 20s because, of course, Mom and Dad had 3 children who got married, who had children, who now have great-grandchildren, and the tradition goes on. And it's probably was always the highlight of our Christmas season in the Van Geloof home growing up.
Yeah, and I have memories of being really little, and even hearing stories about doing St. Nicholas before I can remember, but we would still, with our parents' help, pick a name and write a poem and have like a silly gift that went along with it. And now, like me and my cousins, we're all almost 30 or in our 30s, and it's fun to still get to do that with each other. It's kind of like a family reunion time.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a sweet memory that I know that we want to continue doing.
Yeah, for our family growing up, it really did become almost more of a big deal than Christmas itself. Christmas Eve was when we would always do Christmas. Mom loved candles and twinkly lights. and she couldn't get a hold of those bright enough in the mornings. So our Christmas was always Christmas Eve. And again, with lots of food and lots of candles and lots of tears, happy tears. My mom was a crier and still is at 92 and loves to just cry and see everybody together, and her tears of joy kind of fill the room. So yeah. Kind of fun.
That's sweet. So my next question for you is, how did you decide what traditions you and Dad wanted to bring into our family when you were raising us?
Well, one thing Daddy and I really wanted to make sure happened was we wanted to reinforce and really give a good amount of focus to the real meaning of Christmas, Jesus' birth. And so Dad would always read the Christmas story, and we would all sit on the couch and get our cinnamon rolls and our cocoa and our tea or whatever, and we would gather around in our jammies, which was the only gift that you guys were able to open the night before. And on Christmas morning, we would always try to start our Christmas morning really concentrating on the true meaning of Christmas by Dad reading the story. And as you guys got older, answering questions and singing a few songs. We're a very musical family, so we'd always go into 5-part as best we could and enjoy really honing in on the true meaning before moving into gift exchange and the rest of the day.
Yeah. And that's something I'm so thankful for. And even when I married my husband, it was cool to hear that that's what his family did too.
Yeah.
Before getting into gifts or anything else on Christmas morning, his dad would read the Christmas story from the Bible, just talking about the birth of Christ and the importance of that being the main, what Christmas is about. So that's something that now with our littles, we do on Christmas morning before we, sometimes we have to eat first just because they're little, but before going into presents or anything like that, just sitting and being reminded of what that day meant for us as followers of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and we didn't put a lot of emphasis on Santa. That just wasn't a big part for you guys, but we definitely, we went there. And so Santa always brought one gift, and it was always unwrapped by the chimney or by the fireplace. And you guys loved to do the milk and cookie thing. And it was funny how you guys all just sort of phased out of that. It wasn't some big traumatic letdown, when you decided that wasn't real.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of fun too. But we never let him, bring the great big gift because we didn't want to give Santa all the credit.
Yeah. Which is smart.
Yeah.
It's like, here, Santa brought you some candies in your stocking.
Yeah. But one big tradition of gift giving for you guys, and even to this day, it still is, and that was hot cold. Hot cold was always the funnest, something you all anticipated, knew was coming. Even if all the gifts had been distributed, you would all sort of at some point in the morning, or sometimes we would even linger as you guys got older. I think we started later, which meant sometimes we'd even go into the evening, but you would wait to hear Dad say what? Hot, cold.
Hot, cold.
Yeah. You'd wait to hear him say hot, cold. And then all of you would just perk up like, oh, it's still here. There's something. And that just meant that there was another gift that Daddy had for you guys hidden somewhere. And you'd have to, based on where you walked through the home, it was hidden. And hot, cold was just the best.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
Such a fun tradition we still have.
Even this year, we're getting the kids bikes for Christmas. And the other night, Alexius asked me, he's like, how are we going to wrap these, or where do you want to put them? And I was like, hot, cold.
Really?
Like he can build them in the garage, and we'll put a big bow on them and hide them probably somewhere in the backyard and let the kids, go find them probably later in the morning.
Yeah, super fun.
But yeah, that's like a fun tradition. And I remember, which I thought this was cool to see as a kid, just watching your and Dad's marriage, and maybe that's another podcast for another day. But I loved that at the end of everything, when we were cleaning up, every year, he would be like, okay, one more. And, everyone would be like, what? And he's like, Mom, hot, cold, and he'd have some big
wonderful
gift,
little
like,
thing tucked in the tree
one more thing for you, which was always really sweet to see too. What is, I know you shared a lot of different, traditions and things that we did. But what is a favorite memory of any of those traditions from when we were little?
Well, definitely watching the light bulb go on when we'd sit on the couch and Daddy would explain the birth of Christ, and it seemed you guys were more and more getting that and asking questions. And so I think with every little tradition that we had, the more involved you got in participating in whatever that was. And I also think that it was so fun when, I'll never forget one hot cold, going back to a favorite memory, was the year of the Razor scooter. I mean, this was when you had to, go into another country to find one, and we found 3, and we got those 3 scooters, and they were hidden. And, on some VHS video somewhere, we've got that video of you guys racing through, looking, hoping, because I think we had saved that hot cold for the last. And I know you were all hoping for the Razor, and we had convinced you that Razor is not happening, guys. They're nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And really, that year they weren't.
Yeah.
They were tough to find.
Everyone had them.
Everybody had them, or were getting them.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget you finding those, and just seeing how fun hot cold was, and the look on all your faces, and then tearing off, and then finding helmets and all of that. So
yeah. I remember at that house, our whole house was connected. So the downstairs, you could literally go in circles.
Exactly.
And we had brand new Razors that had clean tires or clean wheels.
Yep.
So we just for hours, just went in circles around the house, which was super fun.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then I think even the times where we didn't want it to end, we had such a good time lingering the day that I think Dad and I he'd be like, "Do you have any money?" He just wanted hot cold to continue. So we were stuffing dollar bills behind couches and, whatever we could do to just keep hot cold going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. That's fun. Well, you shared a lot of ideas with hot cold and even talking about St. Nicholas and some other things, but what are some other fun and practical ways for moms listening to start traditions with their families?
The first thing that came to mind when I looked at this question previously was keep it simple. I think that, 28 years ago, Daddy and I started raising a family. And a lot has changed since then in regards to the expectations that I think mamas place on themselves. And don't get me wrong, I placed plenty of expectations on myself, thinking it had to be perfect and it had to be polished and it had to be just so in order to be acceptable for whatever. But the big thing, honestly, for traditions and starting them is to keep it simple and to realize that children, one thing I've learned over the years of being a teacher and having my own preschool and always being for years and years, and even with my own, surrounded by littles and how easy it is to surprise them and make anything wonderful is keep that in mind, that they love wonder, they love surprise. They're not looking for the Pinterest perfection in whatever you're presenting or implementing as far as a tradition or a new whatever.
Yeah.
And I look back and I know that I placed so much expectation on me, thinking that it had to be a certain way. And really for our little people, they're just happy that something's going to come back again in hopes that what we did last time will happen this time.
Yeah.
And I think if we can really just fall into that, and even if last time fizzled and didn't maybe come out the way we'd hoped it would, maybe this time it'll be a little bit different, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
Kids love repetition. They love routine. They love seeing something that's going to happen again and again and again.
Yeah.
There's safety in that. There's security in that. There's peace in that for them.
Yeah.
And so for you guys, we knew there were certain things. I mean, I can remember the one year, and you guys were teenagers, where I forgot to get the cinnamon rolls. Now, how funny is that?
Yeah.
But I can remember one of you going, "Mom, are we not having cinnamon rolls?" And I know I was going to try baking something different this year but what?
It's tradition.
It's tradition. As silly as a cinnamon roll, right? Or whatever it was, getting in the car and jammies and going and seeing Christmas lights. And here we were 2 days before Christmas, and Teddy's like, "Babe, we gotta throw them in the car." Well, I remember waking you up one night, and because we had to stick with what you were all used to. So, but I think we need to be careful, and I wish I had been more careful as a young mommy, especially, to feel like it had to look a certain way. It doesn't.
Yeah.
To your little people, it can be anything. I remember having a little plaque in our home, and it said, until further notice, celebrate everything. And I would say that, I would see that more so for myself, to look at the little things and make it something exciting and big and whatever it was, especially during the holidays. So I think it's important to just not think it has to be so. Do you remember the couple of times where we would print out recipes and we'd go to Trader Joe's and you all had a cart?
Yeah.
And you got to get the things off that cart or off that recipe and create your own recipe back at the home. Of course, we helped and assisted with you in that. But that was a fun tradition, you know, and it didn't come out perfect. Yeah. But that didn't matter. What mattered is that it let you guys kind of become big.
Have ownership.
And have ownership to something, you know, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's such a good reminder. I think, like, for myself and my peers and, you know, other young mamas around me, especially with social media and with Pinterest, I feel like there is so much comparison and there's so much pressure that a lot of the times you're so focused on having everything just so for the perfect picture or the perfect post and the perfect tree and that you're missing out on. And I know I'm guilty of that. I mean, I'm saying this even for myself.
And I'm still guilty of it.
Yeah.
Here I am, you know, still.
Where, you know, like, and it's fun. It's fun to decorate and it's fun to, you know, do some of those things that are maybe more detailed, but not so much to the point that you're missing out on making those little memories, like throwing your kids in the car in their jammies to go look at lights or, you know, different things like that. So that's a great reminder.
Another big tradition that I think we did even outside of holiday time was, I can remember you guys all participating in it with me. It was never a me running it over. I always wanted you guys to be a part of it, and that was taking meals to people. And whether it was a loss for a family member or a new baby or a new move-in in the neighborhood or whatever, Christmas or not, I always wanted you guys to be a part of that. I wanted you to see what real charity looked like. And I use the term charity just because charity is love. And a song I used to sing growing up whenever they needed a soloist, this is back in the days of the solo, was this song called Charity. And it was basically derived from Paul's writing in 1 Corinthians talking about love. He says, if I have not charity, if love does not flow from me, I am nothing. Jesus, reduce me to love. And I always wanted you guys to get that. And my mother instilled that in me. She was great at making sure that people were taken care of. And I think that for me is the greatest tradition I want to see continue for you guys. And it has. And that is to, you know, be the one to pile everybody in the car and take the meal or the goodie for Christmas or whatever. And so, you know, I don't know if you remember back in the Red Wagon days, we'd pile the wagon full of goodies and we'd go door to door and we'd visit our neighbors and we'd drop things off. And then it turned into taking meals. And now I'm watching you do that with your children. Yeah. And sometimes we came back and you'd smell this amazing meal that we just took to someone and you'd expect that coming back home. And I'd get out the box of cereal and the gallon of milk and I continue to teach you what charity looked like. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And but even that, like, very practically, maybe someone listening is like, man, you know, I would love to help people in need during the holidays or have some kind of tradition like that, but financially I don't feel like I can. But even that, you know, example of like, bring someone a meal in need and maybe you don't have a nice meal that night and you have a box of cereal that night, but you're not having a box of cereal every night. Yeah. And maybe they are, right. You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a great reminder too.
Yeah. I love There's nothing wrong with using this time of the year to really teach sacrifice into our littles. Yeah. And let them be a part of that though, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm so thankful that you instilled that in us growing up in several ways. I mean, with traditions, but just throughout our lives in a lot of different ways. I was talking to someone about that recently. I'm just really thankful for how you and Daddy did that well with us and taught us from a young age how to help those in need and not out of pity, not out of, you know, but just out of love and out of, you know, because the Lord has blessed us. Use, you know, your resources or your time or whatever that may be to just love people around you. So I love that. Also, I love the wagon idea because I got a wagon a couple months ago. So, and I still haven't connected with several of our neighbors. So that might be something we need to do in the next week or so, is just go bring cookies or something to neighbors.
Yeah.
I like that.
One last fun thing I remember we did with you guys is we'd let you bring your sleeping bags down and sleep under the tree.
Oh, really?
With your jammies on, yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
I think you guys all ended up back in your beds because
we'd start off.
It wore off.
Yeah.
By 2 a.m, it's like, I think I'll go back to bed.
Yeah. Or the bigger you get, you're like, I'm going to skip the tree this year.
And I think what always made everything fun was our approach to it. And I think that's something I really want to emphasize to mommies, is the more enthusiasm you present with your idea. Oh my gosh, how about if we, fill in the blank, guess what? What? We're going to, and then whatever you're going to do.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, it creates that excitement,
That's so true. I mean, I try to do that with chores with my kids too.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, but sometimes.
Yeah, but sometimes it does.
We're going to sweep the floor.
Exactly.
So in retrospect, looking back on your life, and I mean, like you said, you had me almost 30 years ago.
Right.
And the boys not long after that. So thinking back to that season of having 3 littles, what is something you wish you could have told yourself as a young mom?
I think, in the precious words of Elsa from the movie Frozen, let it go, let it go. I think there are certain things you just have to let go.
Yeah.
And if it's laundry on the couch so you can snuggle and watch a movie or have a conversation or rub a back and find out what's really going on. I mean, and again, the let it go portion is our own expectation of ourselves. I can remember so many holidays having extended family over and wanting to be that perfect daughter-in-law. And I can remember so clearly running upstairs in the midst of having a ton of people and feeling like it was all on my shoulders and throwing myself on the bed and just sobbing while I had 20 people downstairs because it wasn't going right. And then one year I just didn't. One year before everybody came, I just said, God, you know what? I'm missing this today. If I set an expectation for everything to have to be a certain way. And so that year I just didn't, and I never did after that. But I have to say, your papa, your dad's dad, had a lot to do with me shifting that mindset. When one year we decided to use a stovetop or a countertop oven to make our turkey.
Yeah.
And I think it's because our oven had shut down or something. But we had to have this this countertop oven to bake our turkey. Anyway, long story short, the turkey completely burned to a crisp. And I, of course, wanting everything to be just so, was mortified. And I'll never forget your papa, who was a jokester. We all know that, sometimes he brought me to tears, but I loved him. But I'll never forget, and I think this was the year that things sort of shifted in my own let it go that I felt like needed to really get a hold on, was he put his arm around me and he said, honey, we're not here for the turkey. And I knew what he meant.
Yeah.
He meant, we're not here. The food, we had plenty of other things to eat. We're here to be together and have family. And that reminded me on that day to just let it go and not think that it always had to be a certain perfect way. And I think, back to, and I hate to reiterate social media because there's so many great things to it, but like what you said earlier, I think we do have to be really careful of setting that comparison up and thinking it has to be just so. For my day, it was Martha Stewart. That was, or even Emily Barnes, for those of you old timers out there that are listening. We thought it always had to be a certain Martha Stewart standard or whatever. And thank goodness we have Trader Joe's and we have Costco. And we can now make anything look wonderful by hitting those 2 stores, coming home, lighting a few candles, changing out the tray, flushing the toilet, and having a party.
Yeah.
We're forgetting because we think it has to be just so. So we're not having the parties. We're not having the gatherings. We're not making the homemade gifts because what if the presentation doesn't look perfect?
Yeah.
So we don't make the homemade gift.
Yeah.
And we don't make the homemade meals. And if you don't want to do that, don't. But still, gather and be together and let it go.
Yeah.
And don't miss it.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great reminder. A few days ago, a friend of mine who was on Mommispace a couple months ago, she has a cookie business. and she makes the best sugar cookie dough. And she is selling just the dough or undecorated Christmas cookies.
Brilliant.
Which is so smart.
So smart.
So she was selling these cookies, and, I told her I wanted some. And then I was talking to Alexis, and I was like, we should have a Christmas party. And I know that it's like really late already in December, but I'm like, why don't we just, in the next couple weeks, we still have, a week and a half until Christmas. I'm like, why don't we just, or 2 weeks, see if people can come over, and we'll have a hot cocoa bar and cookies.
Come your jammies.
And come hang out.
Yeah. Come your jammies.
Sing Christmas carols. The other night, I was at a meeting with my mom, and I was the youngest by far in the room.
Oh, you're talking about this mom?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And and for probably the first 10 or 15 minutes of that gathering, we sat around the living room, and one of the ladies played her piano, and everyone was, singing Christmas carols. Mm-hmm. And there was this part of me that was kind of laughing to myself at how cheesy it was, but also this part of me that was like, this is really fun.
But this is really fun.
So that kind of inspired, like, why don't we have a Christmas party and do Christmas carols? And not worrying so much about, is my house perfect? No. Is everything dusted? Is the food perfect? Is the hot cocoa bar Pinterest perfect?
No.
But just, get a box of the packets and put a hot water kettle and call it a night.
And there's so much freedom in that for the person that comes through the door that thinks it has to be just so.
Yeah.
Because really, when we make it look simple, because it is, the person walking through the door has hope.
Yeah.
To say,
I can do this.
Whether it's a Christmas thing or any time of the year.
Right.
When I go to my girlfriend's house, and she can easily pull out her china, but she pulls out these really classic, nice paper plates, I look at that and I go, freedom.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll be less in the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
Or she'll be less in the kitchen when this meal is over, and boy, am I going to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So really, when we do simplify it, we give permission to people coming into our home to know that they can do the same.
Yeah.
Not that they need permission.
Yeah.
But we give them that whatever, and say, hey, we don't have to have this perfect.
Yeah.
You're worried about getting your kids home and bathed and jammied, and maybe that's why you won't come. Then bathe them before you come, jammy them on your way here.
Yeah.
And they'll fall asleep in the car.
Yeah.
And they won't get their teeth brushed, but they'll survive till the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So in this next season, now you're a grandma to my three.
I sure am.
My three.
Omi.
Oh,
yeah.
What are some holiday traditions that you would want to do with your grandchildren as they grow, or even already?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I know I'm going to do them with less stress, and I know I want to do more of them than less. And I know that I do want to just incorporate kind of the same things, because one thing about having littles, I had 3 under 5, and that flurry of 20 years going and now it's gone, I want to repeat that.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for those to be done. So for me, I just want to reincorporate the things I've already done.
Yeah.
And just doing them with my littles.
Yeah.
My my grandbabies.
Yeah.
And so wanting to just do more of that, really. Yeah. And
yeah,
just to continue on.
That's great.
To continue on and have more fun.
Yeah.
Because I'm less tired.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Even though I'm older, I'm less tired. And I know from looking back on my own littles how much fun we had. Mm-hmm. And I want that for them.
Yeah. I love that. So we talked a lot about traditions being fun and fun memories kind of connected with family traditions. But other than being fun, why do you think that having family traditions are valuable?
I think children, no matter what, love having something to look forward to.
Yeah.
They love having that. There's a Dutch term that I know you're familiar with that my mom, your oma, has used for years, and the word is voorpret. And voorpret just is a Dutch word for something to look forward to. Mm-hmm. I would tell Mom, hey, we're going to come pick you up and go get lunch. Oh, now I have voorpret. Mm-hmm. And I gave her something at 92 to look forward to for the week.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. I go and spend the night with her one night a week. She has voorpret on Monday because she knows I'm coming on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I think for our children, it's important to give them that element of voorpret. That element of, oh, yeah, it's this time of year, which means this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, I know I already mentioned it, but it is going back to, it does create that sense of security and consistency, which I think is very important and easy, especially in this culture of, nilly-willy go 1,000 miles an hour. It's super easy to dump consistency.
Right.
So I think it's important that we continue to create that, because with that security comes just the joy that comes with something that's familiar. Yeah. I mean, I will never not make cinnamon rolls again. You know why? And that's silly to make that the example, but you know what I mean by that. Of course, when we come together next week, we will play hot cold. Yeah. Of course, Daddy is going to read the true meaning of Christmas out of Luke 2, because that's what we do. Yeah. And so, I think it's important to keep it, because what's familiar and precious and long lasting gives us that. It just gives us that peace. Yeah. That I can count on this happening. Even if my year was yucky and this didn't come through and that didn't come through, I know that when we gather, these things will happen. Yeah. And there's forepret and there's peace in that.
Yeah. And I think even as moms too, approaching the holidays, coming to the end of the year, you can kind of have two mindsets. You can be very excited about it or very anxious about it, overwhelmed, stressed out. And I think even planning out family traditions or things you want to do, activities you want to do. I know for our family this month, we're going through a book for Advent leading up to Christmas, the first 25 days of December. So every day is another story that leads to the birth of Christ on Christmas morning. And I know that there's so many ideas for Advent activities and calendars and different things like that. So even doing something like that, and maybe it's the planner in me that likes this side of things, but I feel like that makes the holiday season more enjoyable. Like you said, forepret, having forepret when it's October and there's already Christmas decorations everywhere. You're ah. Exactly. But not being stressed out oh man, where are we going this year? Or who, when are the in-laws coming over? Or, starting to get overwhelmed with the things that could be stressful in the holidays, but really just being reminded of what Christmas is about, and focusing on your family and making memories with them, and not, like you said at the beginning, keeping it simple. Yeah. It's just such a great reminder, so that, you can have those traditions and have that consistency every year, but it's something to look forward to, not it's the holidays and dreading that. Right. So that's really good.
And I think also children love parties. And so bring Jesus' birthday into it. Bring happy birthday Jesus into it. Let them consistently be reminded that this is his day. We just get to be a little part of it. Yeah. He's inviting us to celebrate with him. Yeah. And really refocusing that. And then, of course, another big part that I didn't mention earlier, but I want to mention now, is just how music and singing and going to church, at Christmas and as a family, and singing the songs and praying together, and all of that is anything to reemphasize and reinforce the true meaning, I think is super important.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, thanks for everything that you shared on family traditions, and even kind of reminding me of different things that we did as kids, and giving me ideas of things that I could do with my kids, in moving forward. And, it was just sweet hearing from you. I would love to close our, conversation with, I always love asking this question at the end, of whoever I'm chatting with, but, not related to family tradition or Christmas necessarily, more broad than that. But what is the legacy that you hope to leave for your children and grandchildren?
Well, I wrote this out because it's a hard question to answer. Looking at you, so don't look at me.
Yeah, look away.
Okay, look away. But I did write this one out because, you know why. So I wrote, Mama didn't do it perfect, but we all had fun with whatever the occasion was. She lived and served Jesus whenever and however she could. Not perfectly. And I think what I want for all of them is to have felt peace and joy, full bellies and full hearts. And I want them to know that what they saw me do came from love, whether it was for them or for a complete stranger. And in closing, I just, again, wanted to just that last verse of that one song that I can't even tell you how many times I had to sing growing up as a kid. But so in closing, I just want to say that I always want to make sure my children know that whatever I said or whatever I did it with love. I did it in love. And that's the biggest thing that I think any mama wants to leave for their child is it all comes back to that. It all comes back to that. And the one song that I always sang for so many solos growing up, oh my gosh, it's like Fayanna's really going to sing the charity song again. But even here 30, 40 years later, it's that one line. If I have not charity, if love does not flow from me, I am nothing. Jesus, reduce me to love.
I love that.
Thanks, baby. I love you.
I love you.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out all of the goodness from today's episode on the show notes and share this with a friend if it impacted you in any way. You can also leave a review on iTunes so other mamas can join in the movement of loving the woman inside the mother. Join our online Mommispace community every day by following us on Instagram at Mommispace, where you can interact with me, some of our past guests, ask simple or hard questions, and give your valuable input on how to make Mommispace an even more beautiful and safe place for mamas all over the world. All my love to you, Mama. You are enough.